Key themes. 1. The psychology of dualism. Asterisk explores the good and evil within humans and how their boundaries can be blurred. 2. Science of the past and present. Asterisk comparing 19th century and modern medical understanding. It shows how what was then considered a mystery can be interpreted through modern science. 3. Ethics and accountability. Thinking about how advances in science should understand and treat the human spirit. Key characters. 1. Dr. Henry Jekyll. Asterisk a classicist. Scientist who tried to separate the dark side of human beings through his research. The conflicts and misconceptions he experienced from a modern point of view are central. 2. Edward Hyde. Asterisk not just an evil personality, but a being that reveals Jekyll's repressed psychological conflict. In modern medicine, it is analyzed as an example of multiple personality disorders. 3. Clara McGrath. Modern psychiatrist rediscovers Jekyll's research and analyzes Hyde's presence through it. 4. Robert Stevenson. A friend and fellow scientist of Jekyll. Linking the past to the present. Investigate the impact of Jekyll's research on modern times. Plot organization. 1. Jekyll's discovery and experiment. The process by which Jekyll begins his research and produces Hyde, and its results. 2. The emergence of Hyde. Events taking place as Hyde begins to influence Jekyll's daily life. 3. Misunderstanding of the past. Why Jekyll tried to suppress Hyde and the tragic consequences of it. 4. Modern rediscovery. Clara McGrath discovers Jekyll's research and reinterprets Hyde's existence based on it. 5. Science and ethics. Lessons learned by modern scientists from Jekyll's research and ethical debates arising from it. Theme and message. The inside of humans cannot simply be divided into good and evil. And understanding this requires a scientific and psychological approach. It highlights the impact of past scientific experiments on modern times and the ethical responsibilities that arise from them. It compares modern understanding of mental health with past misconceptions and seeks paths for a better future. Ending ideas. Clara McGrath and modern scientists take Jekyll's research one step further in understanding the complexity of the human mind and acknowledge that Hyde's existence is not just a degenerate personality but a result of psychological conflict. This discovery contributes to the development of new treatments for the human mind and reevaluates the potential value of Jekyll's experiments. This rediscovery warns against repeating past mistakes and leaves a message that science must develop in the direction of preserving humanity. Chapter 1. The beginning of Jekyll's experiment. Dr. Henry Jekyll was a highly respected doctor and scientist in London at the end of the 19th century. He had a deep curiosity about human nature and began to explore the possibility of separating the inner good from evil. Jekyll had the belief that human psychology was not simply divided into good and evil, but a mixture of complex emotions and desires. His goal was to reveal a more pure humanity by suppressing or removing the dark side of human beings. Jekyll's research was beyond medical understanding at the time. He wanted to find a way to transform human character through chemical mixtures. In this process, he decided to test his nature through his experiments. This was because he was in conflict between the moral constraints of modern society and his personal ambitions. Jekyll's experiments brought about drastic changes in his daily life. He created another personality, Edward Hyde. Through the drugs he developed, Hyde revealed Jekyll's inner conflict in a physical form, with Jekyll being able to freely vent his suppressed emotions and desires. Hyde was not just an evil person, but rather a symbol of Jekyll's psychological conflict. At this point, Jekyll's experiment can be interpreted as multiple personality disorder. Did From a modern perspective, modern psychiatry sees this disorder as a cause of childhood trauma or psychological stress, which is in line with the psychological conflict that Jekyll experienced while suppressing his desires. Jekyll's experiments gradually made a big impact in London society. Jekyll's reputation was greatly impacted by Hyde's violent behavior, and Jekyll attempted to oppress him. However, in this process, he witnesses the tragic consequences of his research. Hyde was not just an embodiment of evil, but a part of his inner self, which Jekyll himself suppressed and denied. Meanwhile, Clara McGrath, a modern psychiatrist, discovers Jekyll's research records in the pile of ancient books. Based on this, she reinterprets Hyde's existence and begins to examine the impact of Jekyll's experiments on modern science. She tries to understand the complexity of the human mind through Jekyll's research, which is an important opportunity to hold the ethical responsibility of past scientific experiments. McGrath argues that Jekyll's experiments did not simply end in failure, but provided important clues to exploring the complexity of the inner human race. She believes that Jekyll's research has the potential to contribute to the development of modern psychiatry, thereby emphasizing the message that science must develop in the direction of preserving humanity. These findings warn us not to repeat past mistakes and remind us of how science and ethics should be harmonized. Jekyll's experiment is not just a story of the past, but an important lesson for the present and the future. Chapter 2: The Appearance of Hyde. Dr. Henry Jekyll's research began in earnest from his desire to explore the inner world of humans. He realized that human nature could not be explained by a simple dichotomy and wanted to find a deeper truth. In this process, Jekyll experimented with separating the desires and emotions suppressed in his mind. His goal was to reinforce human good nature and to suppress evil nature. However, the experiment did not go as he intended. In the first experiment, Jekyll used his chemical solution to create a different personality, Edward Hyde. Hyde was the result of Jekyll's suppressed emotions and desires being personified. Not just an evil personality, but the expression of all the psychological conflicts and desires that Jekyll had suppressed. The emergence of Hyde gradually began to affect Jekyll's daily life. He initially believed that Jekyll would be able to effectively control Hyde, and that he would be able to maintain control of consciousness even at the moment he transformed into a hydro. However, Hyde gradually began to escape Jekyll's control, causing confusion in his daily life and those around him. Jekyll himself became increasingly confused between the two personalities, and his attempts to restrain Hyde made him even more powerful. Jekyll's dual life had a great influence not only on himself, but also on his friends and colleagues. In particular, Robert Stevenson noticed Jekyll's changes and tried to help him. But Jekyll became increasingly isolated from his experiments and their consequences. At that time, Jekyll's behavior and Hyde's appearance can be seen as an early example of dissociative identity disorder from a modern psychiatric perspective. This disorder is usually triggered by individual psychological conflicts and external stressors. And even in Jekyll's case, it is possible that his internal conflicts and social pressures may have been the main causes of Hyde's creation. Through the examples of Jekyll and Hyde, scientists today are studying the complexity of the human mind, comparing past psychological understanding with modern diagnostic criteria. These studies provide a deeper understanding of human nature and contribute to the search for new ways to treat mental health. Dr. Jekyll's experiment is not just a scientific achievement. It remains a warning about ethical responsibility and the complexity of the human mind. Modern psychiatrists, such as Clara McGrath, are learning from these examples that science must advance in the direction of preserving humanity and caution against repeating past mistakes. The story of Jekyll and Hyde offers a deeper reflection on the psychology of duality and the ethics of science, taking us one step further in understanding the complexity of the human mind and the conflicts that lie within it. These reflections play an important role in modern mental health care and treatment, and provide essential lessons for us to build a better future. Chapter 3: Misunderstanding of the Past. When Dr. Henry Jekyll first created Edward Hyde, he sought to understand the complexity of the human mind by separating the dark side of his inner self. Jekyll believed that his research would contribute to reducing the mental suffering of mankind. However, Hyde increasingly invaded Jekyll's daily life, contrary to his expectations, causing great confusion and pain to Jekyll. During the 19th century, Jekyll's experiments caused numerous questions and misunderstandings. Due to the scientific limitations of that time, many people saw Hyde's existence as only evil. The reason Jekyll tried to oppress Hyde was due to these misunderstandings and fears. He was afraid that Hyde would overwhelm and control him. Jekyll's experiments had uncontrollable consequences for himself, which drove him to despair. At this point, Robert Stevenson appears as Jekyll's friend and fellow scientist. He attempted to gain new insights into human psychology through Jekyll's research. But Hyde's emergence was also a huge shock to him. Stevenson witnesses the tragic consequences of Jekyll's experiment and realizes how dangerous scientific misunderstandings in the past are. In modern times, Clara McGrath rediscovered Jekyll's work. She ponders psychological and ethical questions that contemporary scientists missed through Jekyll's record. McGrath realizes that Hyde is not simply an evil personality, but a product of Jekyll's suppressed psychological conflict. From a contemporary psychiatric perspective, Hyde is analyzed as a case similar to multiple personality disorder. In this process, McGrath recognizes that simple scientific experiments are not enough to understand the complexity of the human mind. She tries to find a balance between ethical responsibility and scientific inquiry so as not to repeat the mistakes made by scientists in the past. McGrath acknowledges the potential value of Jekyll's research, but warns of the dangers it may bring. McGrath's discovery leaves an important lesson for modern scientists. It sends a message that science must move toward preserving humanity in order not to repeat the ethical issues of past experiments. Although Jekyll's experiment came to a tragic end, the insight gained from it contributes to the development of modern science that seeks to understand the complexity of the human mind. Through this, we will be able to create a better future by taking lessons from past mistakes. Chapter 4: Misunderstanding of the Past. At the height of Dr. Henry Jekyll's research, his diary vividly recorded moments of confusion and determination. Jekyll was preoccupied with experiments to separate the inner duality of human beings, leading to the emergence of another self, Edward Hyde. Hyde was not just an embodiment of evil. He was a complex psychological product of the conflict between Jekyll's suppressed desires and social norms. During the 19th century, Jekyll's experiments aroused both scientific curiosity and ethical anxiety. He tried to oppress Hyde to avoid moral judgment, resulting in even more tragic results. Scientists of the time tried to understand the human mind in a dichotomous way, further intensifying Jekyll's anguish. Jekyll's records were full of attempts to explain human inner complexity while revealing his pain. Contemporary psychiatrist Clara McGrath encounters Jekyll's record and notices that his experiments are similar to dissociative identity disorder. Today, this disorder is understood to be the result of the suppression of trauma and psychological conflict, which is in line with the conflict that Jekyll suffered. McGrath discovers through Jekyll's diary that Hyde is not just an evil being, but an important figure that reveals Jekyll's suppressed psychological conflict. Jekyll's research has left important lessons for modern scientists. It made them realize that understanding the complexity of the human mind requires an approach beyond mere dichotomous thinking. Misconceptions of the past can sometimes be reinterpreted in new perspectives through modern discoveries, which play an important role in exploring the boundaries between science and ethics. Jekyll's tragic ending provides an important clue to understanding why he tried to oppress Hyde. His choice was a conflict between social norms and personal desires, which still poses an important topic for modern scientists. Jekyll's experiment makes us think about how science should deal with ethical responsibility, an issue that is constantly being discussed in modern society. This chapter shows how scientific perspectives of the past and present can interact in understanding the human inner world. Jekyll's research is not just an experiment that ended in failure, but remains an example that provides important lessons for modern scientists. Clara McGrath and her colleagues want to take Jekyll one step further in understanding the complexity of the human mind through his record and contribute to establishing new treatments and ethical standards based on this. After all, Jekyll's story leaves a strong message that science must develop in the direction of preserving humanity. This warns modern scientists not to repeat past mistakes and plays an important role in seeking a better future. Chapter 5: Rediscovering Modernity. Dr. Clara McGrath was holding an old diary that she stumbled upon in an old London bookstore. The diary was filled with yellow-colored pages and faded ink, but it contained something amazing. It was a personal record of Dr. Henry Jekyll. She felt that this was the only evidence that Dr. Jekyll left about her research and experiments. As McGrath read Jekyll's diary, he realized that his research was not just an attempt to separate the inner good from evil. Jekyll was studying phenomena similar to dissociative identity disorder. In modern terms, he understood human psychological conflicts and tried to develop better mental health treatments through them. The diary contained the confusion and fear when Jekyll first created Hyde. He knew that Hyde was a manifestation of his dark side, but he recorded that an attempt to oppress him eventually led to Hyde's extreme behavior. Jekyll came to understand that Hyde was not just a bad personality, but a product of suppressed emotions and conflicts. Dr. McGrath felt that through this discovery, it was necessary to reevaluate the impact of scientific experiments in the past on modern psychiatry. She thought that Jekyll's research could provide important lessons for modern mental health treatments. She proposed a new approach to understanding the inner complexities of humans based on Jekyll's research. McGrath and fellow scientists worked together to analyze Jekyll's record and agonized deeply about the boundaries between science and ethics. They acknowledged that Jekyll's experiments had exceeded ethical limits, but concluded that he had much to learn from trying to understand the essence of the human mind. These studies have brought about innovative changes in modern psychiatric treatments. Jekyll's experiment did not simply end in failure, but it also gave modern scientists an opportunity to gain a deeper understanding of the human mind. McGrath and her team tried to develop new treatments and clear up misunderstandings about mental health through this discovery. Eventually, Clara McGrath and her team were forced to reevaluate the potential value of Jekyll's research. They understood the complexity of the human mind and sought new ways to properly deal with it. These rediscovery warned against repeating past mistakes and left a message that science must develop in the direction of preserving humanity. Dr. Jekyll's research has now been evaluated no longer as a tragic failure, but as an important step toward broader understanding of the human mind. Dr. McGrath closed the last chapter of his research and realized that Jekyll's experiments eventually contributed greatly to modern science. Jekyll's research was not just a relic of the past, but an important material suggesting the direction of science in the present and the future. She reminded once again that science should develop in the direction of respecting and preserving humanity through the lessons left by Jekyll.